Welcome, everybody. I'm Paulina Bayron.
And I'm Mike Pechenik.
And we are Two Friends Talking Trends, a podcast about the greatest and latest in marketing and PR. Mike, I'm so excited today, and I'm sure people listening in are very excited as well, because today we're going to cover public relations and earned media and how you can get your business covered by the media. And there's no one better to cover this topic for us than Mike Pechenik. He is a former TV reporter, and he has a lot to share. So, Mike, please just welcome, and thank you so much for walking us through everything. But for us to start, I think first let's walk us through. Can you walk us through, please, what earned media is versus paid media? Because then people listening in can get a better understanding.
Yes, there's definitely a distinction there. So paid media, as the name would suggest, involves money exchanging hands in exchange for some kind of coverage. So if you are paying to play, which means you're paying to be published in some sort of magazine or as a part of some kind of publication, or if you've paid a TV producer who does a lot of these infomercial type productions to come out and profile your business, and then it gets placed somewhere and you've paid for that. And of course, other traditional methods would be advertising, paid ads on social media, things like that. Earned media means you have earned the right to be covered by this publication and you haven't paid for it. So your story is interesting enough, or your expertise fits into the story that the specific reporter is writing about, and you've earned the right to be a part of that publication without having to pay for it.
So, Mike, should earned media be an important part of a company's overall strategy, and why?
So I think the easy answer is to say yes, but I think it really depends on your company and where you are and what your end goal is. If you're a brand new company and you're just getting off the ground and you have, 2 employees, probably not. I think you need to build your company first and start to have a story that's worth telling. But if you're, a little bit further along in the process and you're starting to get some traction in the market, then absolutely, I think earned media is part of your overall strategy, because at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is get brand awareness. I always tell clients, if you are trying to use PR as a means to obtain sales for your company, then it's probably not for you. But if you're looking to create buzz around your company, brand awareness, or third-party validation of what you're doing, which comes from being covered by media outlets, then PR absolutely should be part of the discussion and part of your strategy. I would also say it's not a one and done proposition. If you're going to invest in PR, it's a long game. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint, because it will take a while, sometimes a couple months or longer, for you to get the attention of the reporters you want to get the attention of and the outlets you want to be in for you to get that earned media.
Really good advice, Mike. And if a company listening to us right now, and they're ready to start their PR efforts, what would you say that would be a first step?
Yeah, so the first step, candidly, might not be hiring somebody like myself or hiring a PR agency, because you have to make that investment. But if you have the capacity internally, at least initially, to kind of figure out the audience you want to get in front of, maybe you're the CEO of a tech company and you read a specific trade magazine, and your audience this is a prime audience for you and a customer base for you, then and you can reach out to media and start pitching yourself. Now, if it's at a point where you don't have the capacity for that and you are ready to outsource it, then you hire somebody like myself or a PR agency to really dig in and help you start making those connections. And one of the first things I do with a new client is we sit down and we have a brainstorm session, and we talk about, what is your end goal here? Is your goal to ultimately increase sales? And so that, of course, PR is not going to do that directly, but there's a dotted line there, right? So if you've got brand awareness, people know who you are, Pauline's Widgets, and they're thinking about widgets, you want Pauline's Widgets to be top of mind for them.
Yeah.
Then we talk about, okay, what are the audiences you want to get in front of? If you're a business to business company, getting into the Wall Street Journal, while it's great, that might not be the end game here. You might have much more success, and I would argue you would have much more success getting yourself into some of the more niche trade publications where your customer base is going to be. So, Widget Times or the Widget Weekly is where Pauline's Widgets would want to get some kind of coverage, and we would want to inject Pauline as the CEO into Widget Times, to offer expertise. And then we start talking about, okay, well, what are the tactics? What are the ways we can do that? And there are a lot of ways, and we can certainly talk about that as this conversation progresses. But that's where I would start, is figure out what your goal is, and then let's talk about how we can get you there.
Wow, that's amazing. And it's so important, the work that you do, Mike, in PR in general, because there's even a study that shows that the more a person sees a brand, the more they're likely to like that brand. So exactly what you're talking about in terms of thought leadership, right? And the brand awareness, and you making sure that your audience is aware of your brand and what you do, because then ultimately, it could be the sales is the dotted line that it could bring business to you, but at least is building that authority that you need to build with public relations.
Yeah, and I should add, there's correlation absolutely between when you get a hit in the media and traffic back to your website. There's absolutely a correlation between it. If somebody sees an article about Pauline's Widgets, they're going to go to paulineswidgets.com.
Yeah,
I think we're onto a business idea here, Pauline.
Yeah.
for people to come back and check out your website, and there's absolutely empirical data to support that.
Yeah. And then Mike, so you've been on TV and been a reporter for over 20 years. You've seen all kinds of pitches. So can we talk a little bit about pitches right now? Like, what stands out as one of the worst you received and why, and maybe one of the best you received and why? Because then I want to cover a little bit how to pitch to reporters next.
So yes, I worked in a variety of major market TV newsrooms throughout my career. Most recently at the ABC News affiliate in Atlanta, WSB-TV. And every single day I would get barraged just with pitches from PR firms. They would just get a list of every reporter in the newsroom and just blast us with stuff. And the worst pitch I, to this day, ever received, the subject line was, have you ever thought about what it would be like to be a sugar daddy? To which I responded internally, no, I really haven't, but thank you for the offer.
Thanks for checking.
Thanks for checking. Yeah. And the reason that was such a bad pitch is because the person who sent it didn't do any homework at all. They had no idea what I covered day in and day out. Why in a million years would a hard news operation like where I worked cover that story? We wouldn't.
Yeah.
And so what they're doing is they're spraying and praying is the word. Those are the terms that I didn't coin that, but that's a great way to put it. It's like you're spraying the market with a bunch of BS and hoping that somebody will pick it up. And this is not a way to operate, because it's just spammy. Nobody cares about that. So
it's the opposite of being targeted. In
absolutely,
in marketing is all about that too.
Yeah, it's a shotgun approach instead of a rifle. And yeah, so to this day, that's the worst. One of the better pitches I received, and keep in mind, like in my newsroom, I covered a lot of hard news. I covered a lot of crime. I covered local politics. Very rarely was I going to cover a for-profit business. But one time I did get a pitch from a PR person who had looked up a story I covered on a specific issue. And it was about a woman who was wrongfully arrested. There was some racial profiling going into it. And she represented a nonprofit. I think it was a nonprofit. It might have been a for-profit, but whatever. They did a study about the instances of racial profiling. And it was a way for people to learn about their product or their offering. And she said, hey, I saw you cover this story. We just released this study. This might be of interest to you. And that got my attention, because I was like, okay, well, at least you know what I cover. You paid attention to it. And we ended up doing the story. We ended up interviewing their CEO. We fleshed it out with some local statistics. And so, they made themselves a resource for me as a reporter, and I appreciated that. But there are times I've received, I would say for every 10 pitches I got, one maybe was decent.
So that's very interesting, Mike. How would you say will be the best way to resonate with reporters?
So I think it's really important, if you're going to pitch a reporter, to do your homework about what they cover. Know their beat, know their publication. Are they going to be interested in this? If they work in a hard news environment and you're pitching them a fluffy feel good feature story, very little chance they're going to even open the email. But if they are, for example, a business reporter and they cover a specific industry, like widgets, for example, and you have a story about this game-changing product in the widget world that you feel like is going to be of importance to them, then they would be a person that you would consider potentially reaching out to. But I think it's also important to note that they don't care about how game-changing it is, because you're saying it's game-changing. They're working on a trend piece about the newest widgets on the market, or how the widgets are going to help people brew a cup of coffee in the morning, right? And so if you can find a way to sort of inject yourself into the narrative there and make yourself as a resource to them, then they're more likely to get back to you. And they may not even care about your widget, but they might care about you as the CEO and your experience or your client's experience in this field. And they might be able to, get a quote from you about the evolution of the coffee making widget and why it's so important, for this product to evolve the way it did. So, I would be as targeted as possible. I would do your homework. I would know who it is you're talking to, and don't spam people. Nobody hates anything more from a reporter standpoint than just being spammed by a bunch of BS.
You recently posted a blog on your website. By the way, guys, check it out, MikeVichanek.com, in which you talked about top tips for PR pitching. So can you give us a little juice and share a little bit with us?
I think in any pitch, brevity wins the day. Nobody's going to sit there and read a 5-page email about Pauline's widgets. What's going to resonate with them is a short and sweet subject line that gets to the point about what it is you're trying to tell them about, and then a very short email with very specific calls to action that they're going to, to get back to you about, or here's how we can help you. And I think it's also important to really, I'm going to harken back to this about being a resource. If you can find a way to provide your expertise and your thought leadership as a way to help the reporter do their job, then you're going to have much more success. So if you're just pitching your product as you would like from a marketing standpoint, it's not going to resonate. But if you can flip the script and make yourself the expert and explain how you can help them with their coverage on whatever it is they're doing, I think that's important. But short and sweet, to the point, and very crisp is the best way to go.
Yeah. So I know that you posted a blog on your website, and that's exactly, what you're covering there. This blog talks about tips for PR pitching. Can you just uncover a little bit more on that end?
Yeah, I think one of the other things you can do is, as you're keeping up with trends in the marketplace and finding ways to insert yourself into the conversation, there's a term for it that some people like, some people don't. It's called newsjacking. And it can backfire if you're not careful. If you're just inserting yourself into every story trying to get coverage, it's not going to work. But if you're very targeted about it, you might have some opportunities. So one tactic that I use is I look up the editorial calendars if they're available for a specific publication. A lot of the trades will list them out, and from month to month, you'll know the topics and the trends that they're going to be covering that they've sort of predetermined throughout the year. And so what I'll do is I'll go through and I'll look at that, and then I'll determine, do we have a thought leader or an expert or a resource or an interesting story or some data points that a reporter might be interested in? And then I will pitch them and say, okay, as you're preparing to cover X in the month of December, I have a thought leader, an expert who can provide some analysis for you. And that goes over pretty well. They may not use you at that point. There's not instant gratification always, but they might take that information and store it away for a future date. They might say, hey, thanks, I appreciate this. As we start, preparing our coverage, we'll reach back out to you if we're interested. And it might not be this month, it might be in 2 months. So I would say plant the seed, make yourself a resource and make yourself indispensable to them, and they'll come back to you.
And I know you and I have worked a lot in the B2B space. What kinds of publications are great to pitch in the B2B world?
Yeah, I think that the trade publications present a really great opportunity for business to business companies because you're going to find an audience that cares more about these topics than maybe you would in a mainstream environment. One of my clients, that's primarily where they want to be. They understand that the people who are going to be using their services are reading these trade publications, of which there are many. And getting mainstream coverage, while yeah, sure, you can certainly hang your hat on it and put it on your website, and as mentioned in the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or the Chicago Tribune or whatever, that's great. But unless you're a direct to consumer company and you're trying to just, create brand awareness there, it's better for you to get that brand awareness in some of these niche publications because you're going to have that kind of readership.
Okay, so let's say your client gets interest from a reporter. What's next?
Yeah, so that's great. Congratulations. But your job is not done.
It's only at the beginning.
It's only the beginning. As a PR person, I think the first thing is to respond in a timely manner, thank them for their interest. I think it's important for the business and the client to realize that the reporter is working under incredible deadlines and there are multiple stories they're working on at any given time. So their time is really valuable, as is yours, but you have to be willing to, hop on the train quickly. When they're ready to do the interview, be ready to do the interview, okay? Prepare yourself for the interview. One of the things I provide is media training for clients if they need it, which is to help them get their message boiled down and be ready to talk about what they need to talk about and to get their points across, which is a whole other topic, but it's important as well. And then once you do the interview and you've answered all the questions, it's important to realize that if it's earned media, you have zero editorial control over what happens next. Unless the reporter makes a factual error or they omit something that's just so egregious, there's nothing you can do about it. If you don't like the way you answered a question, or if you don't particularly care for the headline or how your company was inserted into the piece, or they didn't include a backlink to their company, I'm sorry, there's nothing you can do about it at that point. You just have to sort of understand that. And I've had to run interference a lot of that, where client has said, well, why can't we change this or change that? Well, if they didn't get it wrong, I'm sorry. So that's really important to know. And then, be gracious about it, be appreciative, and then share their stuff, share the reporter's material. Reporters love it. They're vain like the rest of us. They want their material shared out there. So get on LinkedIn, post the story, thank the reporter for covering it. Get more eyeballs on it. It helps sort of with that relationship, but it also it shows that you've been there before, you understand it, you appreciate it, and reporters have a really, really hard job to do. And I think anything you can do to make their job easier, make their lives easier, and then appreciate the work they've done goes a long, long way.
Wow, that's so amazing. These are so valuable tips, and you're such a wealth of information, Mike. This conversation has been awesome, and I am sure everyone listening in is just excited to apply all the tips that you shared. Before we go, we have a little bit left, just a minute. I would love for you to share a quick trend that you see in the PR world and the pitching world, and then we can finish up. But this was a great conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think a trend that we're starting to see more of is people using AI to help them with both their pitch writing and their maybe pitch sending. I would caution, always make sure that there's human touch in there, that you're not just sending mass emails to folks, that you're actually trying to personalize it as best you can, and using your brain to put the pitch together as opposed to just relying on machines to do it for you. There's a time and a place for it, and it certainly can be helpful and make things more efficient. But just, I would caution that the human touch cannot be replaced.
Mike, this was such an amazing conversation, and I am sure everybody listening in got a lot of value and a lot of tips from you. You're a wealth of information. Thank you so much for sharing everything with us. And everybody, stay tuned for more episodes of Two Friends Talking Trends. We'll see you next time, and thanks for joining us.